little boy watched fascinated as his mother gently put some lotion on her face. "Why are you putting that on your face, Mommy?" he asked. She says, "To make myself more beautiful." A few moments later, she began washing that off. And the child asked, "Are you giving up already?" Welcome to Mother's Day 2015. It's not easy always being a mom. Those of you who have children know it's not easy regardless of their age. We celebrate good mothers today who demonstrate love with the most challenging of people and circumstances, no matter what the season: infant, child, youth, young adult. One mom I heard about says that she's going to try something different next summer with their dog and with their children. Next summer, she says, she's sending the dog to camp and the kids to obedience school. The late Irma Bombeck once said, "What mother has never fallen on her knees when she's gone into her son's bedroom and prayed, 'Please, God, no more. You were only supposed to give me what I could handle.'" One mother, Pam Hodgkins, tells about when her son arrived back in the United States after a tour of duty overseas as a Marine in Iraq. She says she couldn't help reacting like a mom when she saw him running across the tarmac with an unsheathed bayonet. "Kevin," she shouted for everybody to hear, "don't run with a knife." Every good parent has done that at some time or another, but most of us, let's face it, would have been lost without such parental presence. A couple was moving across country. They decided to drive both of their cars. Their 8-year-old child worried, "How are you going to keep from getting separated and lost from each other?" Dad reassured the child, "We'll drive slowly. One car will follow the other." But the child was emphatic. "What if we do get separated?" The dad, being very helpful, said, "Well, I guess we'll never see each other again." The child answered, "Then I'm going with Mom." Our lesson today from John's Gospel is so appropriate for Mother's Day because it is about the deepest and most abiding love. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, than to lay one's life down for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you a servant because servants don't know what their masters are doing. But I've called you friends. For everything I have learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and I appointed you that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command. Love one another. You can't be any more clear than that, can you? There aren't many rules in the Christian faith. Not really. But our way of life is rooted in love. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul and strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. In John's Gospel, in the 13th chapter, Jesus says to his followers, "It is by such love that you will be known as my disciples." It's pretty clear. Love is at the core of who we are and everything we do as Christians. Christ speaks of laying one's life down for one's friends. True love is attentive and sacrificial. There's a story about two tribes in the Andes that were at war. One tribe lived in the lowlands and the other lived in the mountains. The mountain people invaded the lowlanders' village and kidnapped one of the babies. Took the infant back up the mountains. The great warriors among the lowlanders didn't know how to climb the mountain. They didn't know any of the trails that the mountain people used. They didn't know where to find where the mountain people were on the mountain or how to track on steep terrain. But they got their best warriors of the village together to climb the mountain and bring the baby home. The men tried with all their strength one method of climbing and then another. They tried one trail after another and got lost and turned around. After several days of effort, they had climbed only a few hundred feet. Feeling hopeless and helpless, the lowlander men decided that the cause was lost, and they prepared to return home to their village. As they were gathering their things for the descent, they saw the baby's mother walking toward them. She was coming down the mountain that they hadn't figured out how to climb. And then they saw that she had the baby in her arms. How could that be? Men greeted her and said, "We couldn't climb this mountain. How did you do this when we are much stronger and more able than you?" She shrugged her shoulders and said, "It wasn't your baby." Whether we're parents or children, we can relate. Love doesn't give up. Love never dies. Love empowers and equips us to climb mountains and reach the deepest of valleys. Of course, some of us are at the stage of life when it is our parents who need our sacrificial love. Our parents provided for our needs when we were young, but now it is they who have pressing needs. Who will be there for them? You may be a part of what is often referred to as the sandwich generation, caught between the needs of your own children and the needs of your aging parents. A lady named Bev tells about a time years ago when her mother came for a visit. And her mother asked Bev to take her shopping because she needed a new dress. Bev confesses she's not a very patient person and didn't look forward to going shopping with her mother at all, but they set out nonetheless. They visited almost every store in the community that had ladies' dresses, and her mother tried on dress after dress and rejected them all. As the day wore on, Bev grew weary and even frustrated at her mother. Finally, at the last store, the mother tried on a lovely blue three-piece dress. And the blouse had a bow. Bev watched as her mother tried and struggled with much difficulty to tie the bow. Her hands were so crippled by the arthritis, she just couldn't do it. Immediately, Bev's impatience gave way to an overwhelming wave of compassion for her mother. She turned away to try to hide the tears that had welled up. But regaining her composure, she turned back to her mother to tie the bow for her. And the dress was absolutely beautiful on her mother. And her mother bought it. Their shopping trip was over, but the event was indelibly in Bev's memory. For the rest of the day, Bev went to her mother's room and looked at her hands and took them in her own and kissed them. Then, much to her surprise, told her mom that those hands were the most beautiful hands in the world. Bev says she's so grateful that God let her see with new eyes what a precious, priceless gift, loving and sacrificing, that her mother made for her. She prays that someday her own hands and her heart will have earned such beauty on their own. A long, long, long time ago, back in the mid-1950s, a person named Theodore Gazelle railed and revolted against boringly banal primers forced on first-time readers. His books were penned under a much more familiar name, Dr. Seuss, who transformed reading into something exciting and imaginative, and adding to a new literary library was a protege, P.D. Eastman. He had a few classics of his own. Go Dog Go, One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, and especially the book, Are You My Mother? Just in case, as a parent, you haven't had to read this 1,000,000+ times to your children. It's a simple story of a baby bird who hatches in the nest while his mother is away. And the little bird falls out of the nest and promptly sets off to find his missing mother. And having no clue what his mother would look like, the baby bird approaches dogs and cats, trucks and boats, and finally a huge steam shovel who deftly dumps the baby bird back into its nest. With each encounter, the baby bird goes eyeball to eyeball and asks, "Are you my mother?" In church, that is one of the things that I have grown to appreciate, especially in baptism. We embrace the most vulnerable, those who haven't found their words yet, even before they can ask, "Are you my mother?" we say, you are ours, and we are yours. It is fitting that on Mother's Day, it's designated as a Sunday celebration and has Wesleyan roots. For though we do not refer to this imagery very much anymore, we are gathered this day in a mother church. St. Cyprian of the 3rd century, an African bishop, said it's impossible to have God as Father if we do not have the church as our mother. We don't worship the church or the Bible, we worship God. And as Christians, we affirm about God through witness and ministry in the vivid images that Jesus paints for us. That the church is the living body of Christ. Now, today's text is a continuation of last week's text. Last week, the text spoke of connection through a living vine and branches and bearing fruit. Today, it's all about creating intimate family that binds together the broad assortment of people Jesus collected and gathered and blessed to be His disciples. Other than a couple of brothers, there isn't a bloodline, no genealogy to hold fast these first believers. So Jesus offered to them the image of a family tree. Except this is no ordinary family tree. It's a tree of life with deep roots and broad branches full of life and gathering. Jesus says, abide in me. But this abiding isn't just defined by just sitting around. Abiding in Jesus means being fruitful. Abiding in Jesus means producing and then reproducing the love of Christ in our own lives and in the lives of a new generation. Abiding in Jesus means growing new branches in this vineyard all around us. Jesus says, no longer do I call you servants, I call you friends, because a servant doesn't know what his master is doing. I call you friends because I have made known to you everything about God. I'm going to get back to Dr. Seuss, though. There's a classic that he wrote on Beyond the Zebra. As the narrator of the story explains the alphabet to his young friend Conrad Cornelius O'Donnell Odell, most people stop with Z, but not me. In the places I go, there are things I see that I could never spell if I stopped with Z. I'm telling you this because you're one of my friends. My alphabet starts where your alphabet ends. And the Dr. Seuss story goes on to offer 20 new letters, each one a beautiful and fanciful design. Dr. Seuss' narrator needs all of these new letters to name all of the wonderful, strange, unknown creatures he encounters in the world, because the reality he's discovering requires a bigger vocabulary than just 26 letters. I believe that before Dr. Seuss, Jesus wrote the first version of Beyond Zebra. For that is exactly what Jesus did for his disciples in this farewell discourse. He gave them new words and new love for life. Thanks be to God. Amen.